Welcome to episode 34 of the Talking Fires podcast. I'm here with a special guest today at Petco Park, Marty Caswell of Extra 1360, producer of the Darren Smith Show. She's nice enough to join today. Marty, thanks so much for taking some time.
No, it's a pleasure, Ben. 34 episodes. Wow, that's amazing. Hey, thank
Yeah,
you for the invite. I appreciate it.
yeah, my pleasure. All right, first off, let's get to the Darren Smith Show. Obviously, I was just curious. Give me a sense of your day-to-day schedule when I'm sure it varies, but what's kind of your day-to-day schedule between being the producer for that show and then being on these Zooms and coming to Petco? Just what's your schedule like?
The schedule was different pre-COVID versus the world that we're in right now, because of course, working at the radio station, we were working from home for the past little over a year or so. So a lot of we would be at Darren's house or my house in Pacific Beach, but now we get there I prep from home. I live in PB, so I do my thing in the morning. I check Twitter to make sure that AJ Preller hasn't traded for somebody, or whatever breaking news there is. I watch my sports shows. I read the Athletic, the LA Times. There are certain staples that you read for news on a daily basis. Darren and I, we've been working together for so long that I usually know what the top story is going to be. If there's something that I may not think about that's not mainstream, he'll usually let me know, or I'll throw an idea. But normally we have a good idea the night before what we want to do for the day's show. So now it's like, okay, what happened in the Padres game that's going to be newsworthy the next day? Whether it's a piece of sound or something that I heard from talking to a player or a coach or media members.
Cool.
That's
Yeah.
and then now after that, when the show's over, I race to Petco Park and in time for all the pregame Zooms and the access.
Yeah. Now you get to be on the field a little bit. How good is that to kind of be back?
I'll tell you this: it's better than the previous options, and like right now, when I do get frustrated, because it's not the same as it was before, right? I remember what it was when we first came back, when all the access was done via Zoom. And for me, there's nothing worse than a group Zoom. I hate them. I absolutely hate them. It takes too long. And oftentimes, one thing about talking to players or coaches in person, you want to go ahead and build rapport. You cannot do that on a Zoom. That's a group Zoom. Everyone wants to get their questions in, and you can't. And it's very impersonal. And a lot of times, by the time they get to you, the questions you want to ask, they've already been asked, and you can't be redundant. So it's like, okay, what can I? You have to anticipate. What can I ask that's not obvious that someone's going to ask? So,
Right.
but it's good. Now that we're on the field, I mean, it's getting better. It's different because the Padres, they're not taking traditional BP like they used to. It's optional now. So a lot of times, by the time that we get here, there's maybe 4 or 5 position players on the field. Like for instance, today it was Fernando Tatis Jr. It was Jake Cronenworth, and they were doing some infield drills. Every once in a while, it's Tommy Pham or Manny Machado. But it's different. It's a little bit challenging to get guys, but it's been good to meet players for the first time.
Mhm.
For a lot of these guys.
Yeah. Now moving to the team, what have been your overall biggest takeaways? We're almost to the All-Star break here.
Um, wow, biggest takeaways. The obvious one is Fernando Tatis Jr. is a bigger superstar than we probably ever imagined. We knew what a star he was watching him from day one. Coming out of spring training when Eric Hosmer and Machado went to, I guess it was Andy Green at the time, said you've got to have this guy in the major league roster. So we know how special he is, but it's remarkable to watch how much bigger he is getting. As far as other takeaways from this team, it's amazing how much respect that Jake Cronenworth has from all of his teammates. I had a good conversation with Joe Musgrove yesterday, and he said that when he talks to players from opposing teams, he gets more calls and more dialogue about Jake Cronenworth than anybody else, including Tatis Jr. and Machado. Because you forget that
Wow.
he was, I don't want to say he was a throw-in for the Tommy Pham trade, but no one knew who Jake Cronenworth was at that time. Other takeaways, and it's rather topical for today, is, man, the Padres pitching staff is wow, 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 wow. We heard the news today that Blake Snell is going to miss tomorrow's start, is going to miss the next start because of food poisoning. And I did some digging around today, and I think it's a bit more than food poisoning. There's more going on, but I think it's hard not to be concerned with the pitching staff when Yu Darvish is a horse. Joe Musgrove has been great. He hasn't gone as long as you'd like him to the past couple of starts, but you've got question marks when it comes to Blake Snell's durability, Chris Paddack, which we've seen, and then how long the Padres plan to go with Ryan Weathers. So my biggest takeaways is, listen, the offense, they're going to be okay. I don't think Hosmer is bad as the last month might suggest. And you've seen, that Will Myers can carry this team, but I still think the biggest question mark on this team is the pitching.
Yeah, definitely. Moving to Jayce Tingler,
Yes.
obviously you've been talking to him pretty much via Zoom. What out of the time that you've gotten to talk with him, what do you think he's been like?
Um, yeah, on the Zoom, he's good. He's pretty good on Zoom, and I've actually had the chance. The one guy I've really enjoyed getting to know so far in person has been Jayce Tingler, and getting a sense of his personality. And I like that he's got a little bit of red ass to him, if you will. The conversation that I had with Jayce Tingler in person is completely different than what you might see on a Padre Zoom, or the post game show if you're watching, is it Bally's or Harry
Yeah.
Sports.
Yep.
But no, he's a very engaging, likable person, and he'll give you stuff, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Moving now to just kind of your interactions. Anyone listening or watching on YouTube, you can go to Marty's YouTube channel where she has these interviews with guys. Who has been your favorite Padre to interact with this year so far?
This year, well, that's a great question because I haven't had a chance to interact with all of them. Um, Tatis is always great when you can catch him, and that's Musgrove is a gem. Joe Musgrove is awesome to talk to. He is. I hope you get a chance one day to speak with him because I don't want to say too good to be true, but he gets it, and he's great to talk to. Like, who else has been? Tommy Pham was interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So I finally had the chance to talk to Tommy Pham in person, but for the second time. The first time was last year in spring training, and at that time, I had no idea it was going to be the last time I'd be in a clubhouse, or that there was this virus named COVID coming. But when you get Tommy Pham in a Zoom, in a pregame Zoom or postgame Zoom, he is so intense, right? So intense, and he's very, very focused. And I have never seen him smile before. So I finally had a chance to interview him in person, also an advantage. And I said, listen, let's do something different. Let's talk about something, not just about like your war,
Mhm.
your on base percentage, or being stabbed, which is, I mean, how do you have that conversation? So he's great. There's so much to Tommy Pham, and I want an opportunity to talk to him more because I think that he is fascinating. But yeah, I'd put Tommy Pham right there at that top because he's different. He's different than any athlete I have ever talked to in any sport.
Yeah, and I think it's great to have someone like that because of, just how intense he is.
Yeah.
There's different, obviously the Padres clubhouse, you guys haven't been in it really, but
No.
there's um a lot of different personalities, right? You think Fernando, obviously everyone loves him and you see him smiling all the time, but then you
Yeah.
have the opposite side of the spectrum with Tommy, who's obviously you don't see him doing that much. So I think that's definitely a good thing to have, though, just the wide vary of personalities in a clubhouse. Moving to Eric Hosmer, you mentioned him. His Padres career, I don't think, has been what fans have wanted. Obviously, he's kind of been the punching bag now. Tommy
Yeah.
Pham was that at the beginning of the year. What do you think? I'm a believer in Hosmer. I see what he can do in late game situations and what he's done over his career. Just what's your confidence level, I should say, in Hosmer bouncing back?
I would agree with you because I believe the resume is legitimate. It's one thing to go ahead and worry about another player and say he's struggling, but he's only been around for a couple of years. I think Hosmer is going to be fine. Listen, is he going to be what he was last year when he helped really carry this team? I don't know, but I think Hosmer's going to be okay. I'm not as worried about him as everybody else is. The guy does put the work in. There is no doubt about it. What I've seen him taking late BP, early BP, and when you talk to people behind the scenes, whether it's the coaches or teammates, you hear from them how much he is working. So I'm not too worried about him. And what's interesting? We've been talking so much about like trade deadline. What should they do? I don't think you need Eric Hosmer to go ahead and carry this offense. You need him to play some. You need him to play some great, better defense.
Yeah.
You need him to be better than what he's done, but he has had some hard hit outs. I think Eric Hosmer is going to be okay. I'm not worried about him. I know he's become a convenient punching bag for a variety of reasons. Not all of them are baseball related,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think that's part of it. But I'm not too worried about that. He's not the guy that I'm worried about.
One guy you might be worried about now, Chris Paddack. He had a rough start, 8 earned runs last night. Uh, just what do you think that is the next step for him? He's had a bumpy Padre career. Obviously, he was great in 2019. I at least outperform expectations.
Right.
Last year, Tingler didn't even want to use him in the NLDS.
Yeah.
Just what do you think's the next? I don't think the minor leagues is even is even an option right now because
No.
you're bringing up who Miguel Diaz. I mean, so just what do you think of what's the next steps for Paddock?
I think the next step for him is to take the All Star break and get away, go see his family, go see his brother. Do whatever he did when he was away from the team when he had COVID, when he was in the COVID IL, because he reset. He came back professional at work. you know, I think for him it's a lot more mental. He has been better, but man, when something goes wrong, it's about how does he deal with adversity? How does he bounce back? And yesterday, you knew right away in that first inning, it wasn't working for him. I'm not as worried about. I mean, he hasn't been consistent. He's been up and down all season long, but he has been better over the course of the past month, more of the 2019 version of
Yeah.
Chris Paddack. So sending him down, no. I mean, the Padres need pitchers. They need guys that can eat some innings, and I think they're more encouraged by the starts he had before yesterday against the Nationals. I think they think that's more about what he can be than what he was yesterday, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
But no, I think he needs the All Star break. He needs to
yeah.
just shut it down.
And do you think it's more of a mental thing? He said that in his Zooms. Do you think it's more mental than,
Yes,
yeah?
I do.
Okay.
That's part of it.
Moving to Tatis, his MVP chances, it's obviously been pinned him against Jacob DeGrom. Obviously, I'm one of those people that don't think a pitcher should win it. Uh,
Really?
yeah,
Okay. All right.
I just don't think, that's what the Cy Young's for. Just what do you think of his chances, and do you think obviously if he performs at this level that it's pretty much a easy here's the NL MVP? I mean, because it just doesn't seem like there's a ton of people that are performing at his level, doing the things on offense and defense in the NL, like you see in the AL with Otani and Vlad Jr.
If he finishes the way that he is right now, as far as leading at so many different offensive categories, home runs, RBIs, on base percentage, and the highlight plays that he makes, which you're going to see on ESPN or MLB Network, that's going to help too. So I think that right now he can keep this up. Fingers crossed for Padres fans that he can stay healthy with that shoulder. Then I think he's going to he'll be favored. I
Yeah.
do. It'd be great.
Moving to the All-Star game here. So Manny and Joe Musgrove were obviously the two I think that got a lot of attention of maybe being snubs or whatnot. I was a big proponent of Musgrove getting in. Um, this year I didn't really think that the one team or each player has to have one team rule really was good because Herman Marquez made it over guys like Musgrove and uh, pitchers from the Mets, Marcus Stroman, those guys.
Sure.
What do you think of the All-Star game this year, the Padres representatives? Did you think that Manny got more snub than Joe, or what about that? Yeah.
I think there's a log jam at both their positions, and I think that Manny Machado has been so valuable, and the stats may not show it. And the defense, from watching these games, Ben, the defense has been just lights out incredible. It's hard to think that, as good as Arenado is, it's hard to think that anyone could have played as better defensively than Manny Machado or logged more miles with the shift in right field. And with Joe Musgrove too, there's a log jam with the pitchers. Like tonight's starting pitcher Max Scherzer, you look at his numbers, you can make a case for him starting the All-Star game. He's been great, but he was left out. I know what you're saying as far as the idea of it's the All-Star game. It should be the biggest stars. It shouldn't be every single team. But Padres fans can remember some very thin times where the only way they were getting an All-Star was because they had to have an All-Star.
Yeah. Or it was a
So,
reliever like a Drew Pomerantz or a Kirby Yates.
right.
But I mean,
It was gonna be.
that's
It
just
was
been
gonna
their
be.
history. Like
Yeah, that's
they've
yeah.
they've had great relievers, so they had, in my opinion, those relievers did actually deserve going. And here it's starters, and I don't think like a Herman Marquez was the guy kind of targeted in the last episode. I just didn't think that he deserved it over Joe, but I do understand that each team you want it represented, especially in Colorado.
Right.
Yeah, moving to the trade deadline, obviously that's going to be a big topic after this draft this week. What do you think the approach should be? You're obviously, I've heard you say, you know, target 1, 2, and 3 needs to be pitching, pitching, pitching.
Yes.
So bullpen, starting rotation, what's your approach if you were AJ Preller?
Starting rotation, and the bullpen. That's where I have to go. I don't know what to expect in Dennis Lamet, and I don't think the Padres know what to expect when he does return, likely after the All-Star break. I think there's a good chance that you could see him used in the bullpen. And even if you have him, whether in the rotation or the bullpen, the Padres have to be thinking, like, how long are we going to have this guy? Is this outing going to be the time that this is the last outing of the season? Ryan Weathers I don't know that you're counting him to pitch in meaningful games, logging innings in September. There's going to be a numbers crunch there. With Blake Snell, when he does return, hopefully feeling better and he's healthier, is he a 5-inning guy? So you do need at least one more starting pitcher. You're going to get Matt Strom back in the bullpen sooner rather than later. You have some arms coming there, but you have to shore up your bullpen and your rotation.
Yeah, you mentioned Ryan Weathers.
Yes.
What do you think is the chance of him piggybacking with Lamet when Lamet comes back? That it did have a little bit of success,
Right.
that one weekend with the Cardinals, I believe. Just what do you think of that scenario?
That's not a bad idea. They did that earlier, right? They did that, I think, twice in the regular season. That I like that scenario. So is Weathers your starter and then Lamet picks him up? Like, how do you do this? But listen, if Lamet can come back, great. I like the idea. It's hard for me to envision the Padres saying, okay, Lamet is in our rotation, and then what? And then it's a bullpen game in the third inning, anyways. So
yeah. And then how about in the postseason? Do you see? I know that's well down the line, but would you see Ryan Weathers being, kind of like he was last year in the NLDS briefly, coming out of the bullpen?
sorry, it cut for 1 second. Did you one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Ryan Weathers just in the bullpen in the postseason. We saw that last year in the NLDS. What are your thoughts on that possibility?
One thing we've learned about Ryan Weathers is, man, that guy he's got like ice water in his blood. He can withstand any pressure situation. If Ryan Weathers is still pitching by that time and for the Padres and not used as a trade chip as some think he might be, I love it. I freaking love it, because I think about the guys the Padres can depend on right now. Okay, when you're talking postseason, I put you, Darvish. You can depend on him. You know what to expect. Joe Musgrove, he's going to figure it out. After that, man, all bets are off. But
Yeah.
Ryan Weathers, yeah, he's been good, and he's been consistent.
Yeah. All right. Marty Caswell taking some time here pregame before this series finale with the Nationals. Thank you so much again for joining here, the Talking Fires podcast. We'll catch up down the road.
I look forward to it, Ben. Thank you so much.